Thank you for joining me back here on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. And now we're going straight into the second Monday Night Football game from last night, the earlier one of the two games. And for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people, I'm sure it didn't last long on many people's TVs. It didn't on mine, at least, because I tuned into the game expecting to see at least I was expecting to at least be there till halftime, but I turned the game off after Keon Coleman scored that touchdown, I think, to make it 20-3. And then I just mainly watched the other Monday Night Football game and Monday Night Raw as well. And I don't regret it one bit because this game ended 47-10. The Bills destroying the Jaguars, going down to 3-0, and the Jags still remaining winless at 0-3. The score was 34-3 at halftime, basically over before the second half started, obviously. And Josh Allen, another masterful performance in that game. I'll actually show you the kind of difference that we're talking about from Josh Allen and the difference in performance as well with Trevor Lawrence. Because if you look at these stats here, it just says it all itself right on the screen. You look at Josh Allen. In this game, he was 23 of 30. 263 yards, four touchdowns in the first half, I might add you. He's the first quarterback to throw for four first half touchdowns on Monday Night Football since Ben Roethlisberger, and this was the lowest scoring performance in the Trevor Lawrence era for the Jaguars and obviously for Lawrence himself. And these two, the disparity in the difference with how these two played, I go back to the preview that I had yesterday, and I mentioned how one of the factors will be how each quarterback obviously plays, kind of knowing that Josh Allen, I didn't expect Josh Allen to kind of drop or struggle or anything like that, especially at home, but it was really more so of a call out or a call to action for Trevor Lawrence because, he had to play great in this game to give the Jaguars a chance. He had to play better than any of the performances we've seen so far for them to at least have a chance because that defense was a major concern for me and it showed, right? The Bills had no trouble going up and down the field, scoring points, over 30 points in just the first half. They scored that many points in the entire game against the Arizona Cardinals and pretty much the same thing against the Miami Dolphins. And, the Jaguars couldn't hold up for more than a half. So I knew that defense for the Jaguars was going to be a concern for me outside of their defensive line, but, Trevor Lawrence just didn't live up to the bill, and I don't want to make it sound like it's totally on him, but, it's hard to just flat out defend him from some of the criticisms because he hasn't been great at that much this season. There has been some moments where he's made some nice throws or he's made some plays to kind of keep this offense going, but it feels like something's off this year, and I can't understand why because they basically brought back the same offense as last year, where at one point they were 8-3, I think, to lead the entire AFC. Of course, you lose Calvin Ridley. That's the biggest loss that they had this year, but their defense got better on the defensive line. They're pretty unlucky with injuries, but Travis Etienne hasn't really gotten going. It looks like their offensive tackles and their offensive line overall have taken a step back. And again, they added a guy like Mitch Morse at center. And they have pretty much the same tackles and same offensive line. So I am puzzled to understand why the team around Trevor Lawrence, I guess if you want to put it, a good amount of the blame on them, why it's not really clicking at this point. And I think it's easier to put it on Doug Peterson as well to just kind of say, let's change the coach and move on. But, I am a fan of Doug Peterson. I think he is a good coach, so I can't just put all the blame on him after he's had success elsewhere, right? Notably winning the Super Bowl with the Eagles and just last year having a great season with this team. So as much as I don't want to blame Trevor, it's still hard not to because he is playing the quarterback position, and especially when the other guy on the other team is playing to this level, it's hard to kind of hide away from the criticism, right? When one team's quarterback is almost perfect on the night, everybody else looks at the other quarterback and thinks, all right, well, how did this guy do? And you look at the numbers, and the numbers don't tell the entire story, obviously, when it's a combination of the offense and defense, right? As much as the offense and just Josh Allen alone as a talent is phenomenal, I think, again, I find myself on here giving credit to the mastermind behind all of this. Their offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, for the Buffalo Bills, continues to show his excellence because everything looks like, when I'm watching the Bills, it looks like they're maneuvering the opposing defense and maneuvering them in a way that every throw that is supposed to go to whatever wide receiver is getting there on time, on the right rhythm and everything. They never look out of sync. They never look like they're flustered or trying to audible to different things because something isn't what they thought it would be. Everything that this offense seems to be firing on right now is working to perfection. And again, a lot of it will go to the talent of Josh Allen, building this team around him. But I think, again, you can't go without mentioning Joe Brady and how well of a job he's done to end up in this situation, right? With Stephon Diggs moving on, you bring in guys that aren't household names, but still you somehow look better than how you finished the year last year. And they were in a tight game with the Kansas City Chiefs, if not for a missed field goal. I can't remember if that would have tied it or would have, gave them the lead. I'm pretty sure it would have tied the game in that playoff game. But regardless of that, they look good to end the year last year. Now Stephon Diggs moves on, obviously, and still they're somehow better. That can't all just be on Josh for as good as he is. Joe Brady's doing a great job with that. That's 31 plus points now in each of their first games without those household names like I mentioned, and it's all a perfect fit in a well-rounded system that is very balanced. They run the ball very well. They use Josh's arm when they need to. Josh isn't rolling out every other play and chucking it across his body or down the middle of the field anymore. Everything is very calculated and very rhythmic up until this point. And I didn't want to bring it up, but talking about fitting into this perfect system, Josh Allen mentioned after the game that this is a lot easier, or it's a lot better when nobody cares about the stats, nobody cares when or who's scoring the touchdowns, and everybody right from the moment he said that, pointed to Stephon Diggs and how there might have been issues there with how Diggs' production, sort of dipped last year and how that could have created a problem between them and how, we saw the riffs on the sideline and things like that. People kind of took that once Josh said it and kind of ran with it, which, I don't know. I mean, it looks like the Bills weren't awful with Stephon Diggs. Obviously, they made it to the AFC Conference championship game, so it's not like, it wasn't working out completely, but I think there was some tension there, and people saw that, heard that quote, and right away took it as a shot to Stephon Diggs. If it is, if it isn't, it doesn't really matter now. Diggs is in a great situation. Josh is running the league, front runner for MVP probably, but in this game, that is as expected. And I wanted to bring up this question because, I had the Bills winning in this game, but the question that popped up to me in how dominant this win ended up playing out was how did we learn more about the Bills or did we learn more about the Jacksonville Jaguars after this game? Because I know the Bills were going to be good or they looked good in the first 2 weeks, but I think now going back at home against another young, highest paid quarterback in the NFL, a team that was very good last year, still 0-2, you're not writing anyone completely off yet, but I thought this could be a time where maybe Trevor, great opportunity to do it, everyone watching on Monday Night Football to kind of stake your claim and shake everything back to the way it should be with you playing great, but it didn't work out like that, right? The Bills, even though they played better and more dominant than I even predicted, I feel like after this performance from the Jaguars mostly, I feel like I learned more about them than I did about the Bills because I picked them to win anyway, so if they won by 10 or however many, 37 points like they did, I wouldn't have been surprised, to be honest. And now, not to say that this Jaguars offense is the worst or anything, but it is struggling to run the ball, obviously, so that is something that now I'm starting to understand, whereas week 1 through week 2, I'm thinking, all right, they're just starting off slow, it's not really clicking just yet, but now 3 weeks in, and Travis Etienne is still not producing these explosive numbers like we saw last year as well. And that's one of the main reasons why. Something about this offensive line, the run game, and Trevor all kind of culminating into the reason where this offense just doesn't look as explosive as it once did. Last year, Travis was establishing everything. He was going out, and they were kind of getting out in front of teams, and it was easier for their defense to play off of that, right? That's the story of the entire season, right? Having your defense play with the lead, and that's how you kind of mask one side of the ball. If you have a dominant defense, they keep the score low and make sure the offense is able to get back into it. And if you have a dominant offense, you get out in front, and if your defense isn't as good, it doesn't really hurt them as much because they know they're playing with a cushion, right? So it looks like the Jaguars don't have either of that because the offensive line is kind of struggling now. They're over-relying on guys like Brian Thomas Jr., who's only a rookie, Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk. They obviously missed Evan Ingram, right, not playing in last night's game. But to me, the pieces don't fit too much with this team because the Jaguars' defense isn't good enough to hold up very long against elite offenses, and they can sort of hang in there with average offenses, right? But this Jaguars defense come in with a depleted secondary, no Darnell Savage, no Tyus Campbell, two of their better secondary players, and their defensive line can't do it all, especially when they're playing from behind, and that pass rush, again, like we mentioned in the last segment, is lessened. They can't get after Josh Allen, and then Josh Allen, is just sitting back there picking them apart. It's very demoralizing when all of that is happening at once, and to me, we learned that the Jaguars, the defense is a bigger problem than I thought. Their O-line is struggling as well, like I said. They allowed 3 sacks, 4 sacks, and then 4 sacks again last night. Without Evan Ingram, it really limits this offense and the options for Trevor Lawrence. And again, I'm mentioning things around Trevor, but also Trevor's inconsistencies with the throws that he made. The one he sailed over, Brian Thomas Jr., was not great. The window wasn't wide open, like 15 or 20 yards, but it was big enough for Trevor to at least put it behind him or a little bit in front of him. He kind of sailed it over him right into the hands of DeMar Hamlin. So that didn't look great, and I think these inconsistencies can't happen, and it's not fair that they can't happen, right? Because every quarterback makes mistakes, every quarterback has bad throws, but especially young ones. Trevor is, I think, only just about to turn 25. But even still, it's not fair, and I say that because the defense, again, isn't equipped well enough to kind of mask those mistakes. Trevor's forced to play to a higher level right now, and the margin of error is so small for Trevor that once he makes a bad throw or a bad decision, it feels like it's amplified because their defense can't stop anybody, not on the running game especially as well. And you look at other situations as well where the quarterback might have inconsistencies or the quarterback might have bad throws or bad decisions. You look at Pittsburgh, Minnesota a little bit, but Sam Darnold is playing very well. Derek Carr, showing some of the deficiencies that he may have for the Saints. The Eagles with the turnovers that Jalen Hurts might have, and the Chargers as well, not having as many weapons or just as many as the Jaguars do. All of them have very, very good defenses, right? The Chargers and the Steelers have two of the best ones. The Vikings defense is impressing a lot of people around the league. The Saints just put up a good defensive performance against the Eagles, and likewise, the Eagles just shut down the Saints offense. So whether their quarterbacks, like Trevor, might have bad moments or turnovers or something like that, their defenses are there to kind of save them a little bit, hold opposing offenses to lower scores, and still giving them a chance, keeping them in the game. The Jaguars don't have that, so you get scores like this, right? When you're going up against the Bills offense that doesn't miss on anything, and your offense is stuttering, you find yourself down 20, 28-3, and you can't do anything about it, right? You can't stop anybody, and the offense really isn't equipped as well as it once was. So that's kind of the reasoning why I think the score kind of played out like this. Apart from obviously the Bills being a very good team, they're proving that. The Jaguars' issues in this game aren't just because they played the Bills. They kind of go deeper than that. And I'll be interested to see how they try and cover that up a little bit here, because now at 0-3, they're fortunate that that division isn't running away with the rest of the teams, right? Tennessee is also 0-3. The Colts are only 1-2, and the Texans just lost as well. So it's not completely away from them, but bigger picture in the entire conference, and could start to look a little bleak if by next week we're seeing the same thing. So the Bills, dominant win overall. Jaguars still have some problems that they have to kind of deal with going forward. But speaking about the AFC, we moved to a better situation, like I mentioned, with the Steelers. Now focusing in more on that game, talking about their performance against the Chargers. Steelers win that game 20-10. The biggest story could be that Justin Fields has solidified himself as the starting quarterback, in my opinion. I'll tell you guys why I believe that, and going over some of the recap of that game in the next segment after this break. We'll be right back.